A celestial being told me what happens after death, standing in my mother's hospital room 3 minutes after the machines went quiet, and I wasn't ready for the answer. I thought I was. I'm a hospice chaplain. I've sat beside 214 deathbeds, held hands that went from warm to cold, said prayers that were supposed to prepare me for the moment it was my own mother on the table. But nothing prepares you, not theology, not experience. Not the speeches you've given to other families about peace and heaven and God's plan. When the being appeared, calling himself Metatron, a name I'd only read in obscure religious texts, he didn't offer comfort. He offered truth. And the truth about what happens in the 7 minutes after the last breath shattered every belief I'd built my career on and replaced it with something so raw, so operational, so absolutely undeniable that I stood there shaking, unable to decide if I was being blessed or destroyed. If you've ever wondered what actually happens when someone dies, not the sanitized version they teach in church, not the hopeful guesses people whisper at funerals, but the real mechanics of where consciousness goes when the body stops, stay. Because what I learned in those 17 minutes rewrote my faith, my grief, and my understanding of what it means to say goodbye. This isn't a sermon. It's a field report from someone who got the manual no seminary ever provided. I wasn't ready for the answer, but I'm ready now to tell you what I learned, complete with 3 pieces of evidence I verified the next morning that made my hands shake so hard I couldn't hold my coffee. Take a breath. Turn off distractions. This story will challenge everything you think you know about death, and by the end you'll either dismiss me as broken by grief or you'll never attend another funeral the same way again. My name is Father James Whitmore, though most people just call me Father James. I'm 47 years old and I've been a hospice chaplain for 16 years at St. Catherine's in Baltimore. I've held the hands of veterans and teenagers, CEOs and addicts, believers and atheists, and I've learned that at the threshold, none of those labels matter. What matters is whether someone is afraid, and my job is to help them not be afraid when the floor disappears. My mother, Catherine, yes, I named my career after her, or maybe she named it for me before I was born, died at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. Pancreatic cancer. 81 days from diagnosis to death, which is cruelly typical for that particular demon. She'd been a nurse for 40 years, so she knew exactly what was happening to her body at every stage, which meant she couldn't hide behind hope when hope required ignorance. She died in room 304 of the same hospital where I'd given last rites to hundreds of strangers. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't peaceful. It was just a breath that didn't have a next one, and the machines registered what her body had decided, and the nurse came in with the face nurses make when they've done this too many times to find it shocking anymore. She checked the monitor, looked at the clock, wrote down 11:47 p.m. and said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." Then she left us alone because hospitals understand that the first minutes belong to the family, not to paperwork. I sat there holding my mother's hand, which was still warm but cooling in a way that felt aggressive, like heat abandoning ship. And I did what I always do in hospital rooms. I prayed. But this time, the prayer wasn't for her. It was a question. Out loud to the room, to God, to anyone who was listening. What happens now? Not "she's with you, Lord," or "she's at peace." What actually happens to the consciousness that was Catherine Whitmore in the next 7 minutes? The air changed. Not temperature, though it did get warmer. Not smell, though suddenly the antiseptic hospital stench was replaced by something that smelled like rain on stone, which doesn't belong in a room with no windows. The air changed texture, density, the way it does before a storm when your skin knows something's coming before your brain registers it. A figure appeared beside the window, not walked in, not materialized dramatically, just became visible, as if he'd been there the whole time and I'd suddenly developed the ability to see him. He was tall, 7 feet, maybe more, but height felt negotiable, like something my brain was assigning because it needed dimensions to process something that didn't operate in 3 dimensions naturally. He was shaped like a man but composed of light that had learned structure, geometric patterns that shifted and reconfigured without losing coherence. His face was calm, ancient, kind in a way that didn't require smiling. "James," he said, and the voice wasn't sound. It was knowing, arriving in the part of my brain where I keep my name and my fears and the questions I don't ask out loud in church. I'm Metatron. I guide consciousness through the passage between breathing and what comes after. You asked what happens now, I'll show you. But first you need proof or your chaplain brain will convince you this is grief-induced psychosis by sunrise. I didn't ask if he was real. When something made of impossible light uses your name in your dead mother's hospital room, you don't debate ontology. You listen. What proof? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady for someone whose entire theological framework was about to be audited by a celestial accountant. 3 anchors, Metatron said, his form shifting slightly like he was settling into a teaching stance. Evidence you can verify tomorrow when grief tries to convince you I was a hallucination. He gestured, not with hands, but his attention formed something like a pointing motion, and 3 images appeared in the air beside my mother's bed, hanging there like holograms projected from a source that didn't exist. First anchor, he said. Your mother's journal, the one she kept in the drawer of her bedside table at home. You've never read it because she asked you not to until after she was gone. On page 47, dated 6 weeks ago, she wrote a sentence that I'm going to tell you now. James thinks he's prepared because he does this for a living, but no one is prepared to say goodbye to their mother. I hope the angels are kinder to him than he is to himself. When you read that tomorrow, you'll know I didn't pull it from your memory because you've never seen it. Second anchor, he continued. At exactly 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes after your mother died, the nurse who was in this room, her name is Patricia Chen, wrote in her log that she saw the patient's heart monitor spike briefly to 80 beats per minute before returning to flatline. Electrical malfunction, she'll note, but tomorrow ask her if she's ever seen that happen before. She'll say yes, 43 times in 12 years of hospice work. She calls it the goodbye signal. She's seen it every time someone crosses while a loved one is still in the room. Third anchor, Metatron said, and the third image was simpler, a photograph. In your mother's wallet behind her driver's license, there's a photo of you at age 7, sitting in a hospital waiting room. You don't remember it being taken, you don't remember that day. But when you see it tomorrow, you'll remember why you became a chaplain instead of a doctor like she wanted. That memory is locked, but the photograph will unlock it, and you'll understand that she knew all along why you made the choice you did. I stared at the images floating in the air beside the woman who raised me, and my brain did what trained clergy brains do when presented with the miraculous. It looked for the trick, the psychological mechanism, the explanation that keeps God comfortably abstract instead of operationally specific. Metatron waited with infinite patience. Okay, I finally said, hands shaking. I'll check tomorrow, now show me. What happens to her in the next 7 minutes? The first minute is separation, Metatron said, and the hospital room peeled back, not physically moving, but layers of reality becoming visible, like overlapping transparencies. I could see my mother's body on the bed, the machines doing their post-death protocols, and I could see something else, a luminous form rising from her chest, shaped like her, but made of light, that pulsed with the same rhythm her heart used to beat. She's still here, I asked, staring at the light version of my mother hovering 3 feet above her body, looking down at herself with an expression I couldn't read. For 7 minutes, consciousness lingers at the threshold, Metatron explained. Not trapped, not confused, orienting. She's realizing that the pain is gone, that the body that hurt so much these last 81 days was clothing she can now remove. Watch. The light form of my mother touched her own face, or where her face would be if light had faces, and she smiled. Not the pained smile she'd been giving me for weeks, the brave smile that said, I'm okay, when she absolutely wasn't. A real smile, relief so profound, it looked like joy. The second minute is recognition, Metatron continued. She sees you. Not with eyes are for bodies, but she perceives you, feels your presence, knows you're here, and she's trying to tell you something. I watched my mother's light form move toward me, reaching out, and I felt it. A warmth on my left shoulder, exactly where she used to put her hand when I was a kid, and she wanted to say something important without words. Can she hear me? I asked, tears streaming down my face because I had so many things I hadn't said. So many apologies for being too busy, too distracted, too confident that we had more time. Always, Metatron said, but she hears intention more clearly than words. If you need to say something, say it now. The 3rd minute is when guides arrive. I looked at my mother's light form and said the only truth that mattered. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't visit more. I'm sorry I was checking my phone during your chemo appointments. I'm sorry I thought I had more time. And Mum, I'm not ready for you to go. Her light pulsed brighter, and somehow I knew, not heard, but knew, her response. You're never ready, baby. That's what makes it love. 3rd minute, Metatron announced, and 2 more figures appeared beside my mother. One I recognized immediately, my father, who died when I was 12, composed of the same geometric light but unmistakably him in the way presence can be unmistakable. The other I didn't know, but my mother's light form moved toward her with recognition and joy. Her grandmother, Metatron said before I could ask, died before you were born. She's been waiting. I watched my mother embrace beings made of light, watched them communicate in ways that didn't require language, and I realized I wasn't just witnessing death, I was witnessing a reunion I'd been promised in sermons, but never truly believed was this immediate, this real, this organized. 4th minute is decision, Metatron said. She's given a choice. Continue forward, or stay at the threshold to watch over you for a while. Most choose forward. The pull is strong, but some linger. Will she stay? I asked, not sure which answer I wanted. She's choosing forward, Metatron said gently. Not because she doesn't love you, but because staying would mean watching you grieve without being able to ease it, and that's not love, that's torture. She's trusting that you'll be okay, and that trust is how she's able to let go. 5th minute is the review preview, Metatron continued, and my mother's light form was shown something I couldn't see, images flashing past her perception too fast for me to track. She's seeing highlights, the moments that mattered, not the big events, graduations, weddings, promotions, the small ones. The Tuesday afternoon when she taught you to tie your shoes, the night you were 10 and had nightmares, and she sat on your floor until you fell back asleep. The morning you told her you were going to be a chaplain, not a doctor, and she said, I'm proud of you, even though she'd hoped for something else. These are the moments that built who you are, and she's seeing now how they ripple forward in ways she never witnessed. I was sobbing now, the kind of crying that doesn't care about dignity or theology or anything except the fact that I was watching my mother leave, and there was nothing I could do to make her stay. 6th minute is transition preparation, Metatron said. The guides are showing her where she'll go first. There are places, James, not metaphors, actual locations where consciousness learns, works, grows. She'll start in the Hall of Understanding, where she'll review her entire life from every perspective. Hers, yours, her patient's, her husband's. She'll feel everything she caused, understand why she made every choice, integrate lessons that bodies don't have time to process. And then, I asked, because if this was a map, I needed all the landmarks. Then she'll choose her work, Metatron said. Souls don't retire, they contribute. She was a nurse for 40 years. She'll likely choose to help newly crossed souls who died in confusion or pain, the ones who need someone with steady hands and a kind voice to orient them to what comes next. She'll do in death what she did in life, heal. 7th minute is crossing, Metatron said, and I watched my mother's light form turn toward a doorway that hadn't been there a second ago, a passage that led to somewhere I couldn't see but could feel, vast, welcoming, full of purpose. She looked back at me one more time, and I felt her love like a physical pressure in my chest, and then she stepped through. She's gone, Metatron said, and she's just arrived. Both are true. The hospital room returned to normal, the machines quiet, my mother's body still, the air conditioning humming its industrial lullaby. Metatron remained, his light dimmer now, as if showing me the 7 minutes had cost him something. That's the mechanics, he said. Now I'll show you where she is. The room dissolved again, but this time we went somewhere. Not physically. My body stayed in the chair beside the bed, but my awareness expanded, stretched, followed Metatron to a place that looked like a vast library, where the books were made of light and the shelves were organized by feeling instead of subject. The Hall of Understanding, Metatron named it. where consciousness reviews life not for judgment, but for integration. There's no judge here, James. No deity with a ledger keeping score. There's only truth, presented with compassion, and the soul's own recognition of patterns, choices, and consequences. I saw my mother there, or the consciousness that had been Catherine Whitmore, standing in front of what looked like a viewing platform. Scenes from her life played out in front of her, but not like a movie, three-dimensional, immersive, showing not just what happened, but what everyone involved felt, thought, feared, hoped. "She's watching the night your father died," Metatron said quietly. "The night she decided to raise you alone rather than remarry, because she thought you needed stability more than she needed companionship. She's seeing it now from your perspective, how you blamed yourself for her loneliness, how you tried to be good enough to make up for it, how that pressure shaped you into someone who helps others at the expense of helping himself. I watched my mother watch herself make a choice that had defined my childhood, and I saw her understand, not just intellectually, but in her bones, if light beings have bones, that love is complicated, that good intentions can create difficult patterns, that parents and children hurt each other even when they're trying to help. "Is she in pain?" I asked, because watching looked like it should hurt. "She's in understanding," Metatron said. "Pain and peace aren't opposites here. They're both tools for learning. She's not being punished for anything, she's being educated." The hall faded and we were in a different location. This one looked like a hospital, but cleaner, brighter, organized not by disease but by the type of care needed. Souls moved through corridors, some confused, some frightened, some curious, and other souls, guides, teachers, former nurses like my mother, met them with the same calm competence I'd seen her bring to bedsides for 4 decades. "The healing halls," Metatron said. "When newly crossed souls who died in trauma, confusion, or pain come to Orient, your mother will work here. She's already starting her training. Watch." I saw her, still light, still geometric, but unmistakably her in the way she moved, the way she approached a confused soul the same way she used to approach frightened patients, with her hands visible, her voice steady, her entire presence radiating, "You're safe now." She was teaching a soul who died in a car accident how to let go of the panic that had frozen in his consciousness at the moment of impact, showing him that the pain was memory, not present experience, that he could release it the way you release a breath you've been holding too long. "She's good at this," I said, pride mixing with grief in a way that made my chest hurt. "She's been preparing for this work her entire life," Metatron agreed. "That's how it works. What you practice in life becomes what you contribute after." She practiced healing the frightened. Now she does it with different tools, different patients, but the same heart. The healing halls faded, and we were in a third location. This one didn't have walls or floors or any of the spatial logic I was used to. It looked like a garden, but the plants were made of memory and the paths were made of intention, and walking required thinking about where you wanted to go instead of moving your legs. "The garden of continuing love," Metatron said, "where souls come to send messages to the living. This is how your mother will reach you when you need her." I watched her move through the garden, stopping at what looked like a fountain that flowed upward instead of down, and she placed her hands in the water that wasn't water, and I knew, somehow without being told, that she was sending something to me. "What did she just send?" I asked. "You'll receive it in 3 days," Metatron said. "You'll be sitting in your office at St. Catherine's, about to give up on a patient who's refusing end-of-life care because he's terrified of what comes next. You'll be out of words, out of patience, out of faith in your own ability to help, and you'll smell lavender, your mother's perfume, the one she wore every Sunday. You'll turn around, expecting to see someone in the doorway, and no one will be there. But the smell will be so strong, so specific, that you'll sit back down and try one more time with that patient. And this time you'll find the right words, because your mother will be sending them through the frequency of that scent." I started crying again, but this time it wasn't grief. It was something else, something I didn't have a word for. Gratitude and sorrow and awe, all mixed together into an emotion that didn't fit inside my chest. "She's not gone," I said, testing the sentence to see if it sounded true. "She's relocated," Metatron corrected gently. She's working from a different office, using different tools, but she's still doing the work that makes her who she is. And James, she can still help you. The connection doesn't break when the body does. It just changes frequencies. We returned to the hospital room, and Metatron's presence was barely holding coherence now, flickering like a light bulb that's used up most of its filament. "I need to tell you what you weren't ready to hear," he said, and his tone shifted to something that felt like a surgeon preparing to tell you the truth about what he found inside. "Everything your seminary taught you about death is a simplification designed to comfort people who aren't ready for complexity. Heaven exists, but not as a retirement home in the sky. It's a frequency of consciousness, a state of being where understanding replaces fear and love replaces need. Hell exists, but not as a torture chamber run by a vindictive deity. It's a state of consciousness where souls who refuse to understand, who cling to anger or control or victimhood, experience the consequences of those choices until they're ready to let go. No one is sent to hell. Souls choose it by refusing the work of integration, and no one stays forever. Eventually everyone softens, eventually everyone chooses growth over stagnation." "God exists," Metatron continued, "but not as a person. God is the field, the consciousness inside which all other consciousness operates. You've been praying to an image, James. What's been answering is the field itself, which doesn't have preferences about what you call it or how you worship. It only responds to the quality of your intention. Your mother isn't with God in the sense you've been preaching. She's working inside the field that God is. You're inside the same field. You've always been in the same room. You just didn't have the eyes to see it." He moved closer, and I felt warmth, presence, something that cared in a way that didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. "Here's what you do now," he said. 5 practices. Not faith, not theology. Practices. Repeatable actions that will keep you connected to your mother and to the truth you learned tonight. 1. Every morning before you visit a patient, say out loud, "Mom, help me find the right words." 3 words plus her name. You don't have to believe she hears it. Intention builds infrastructure. She tunes to your need, not your certainty. 2. Once a week, sit in silence for 15 minutes and pay attention to what arrives in your mind. Thoughts that feel like yours, but aren't. Memories you don't remember having. Images of patients you haven't met yet. That's her, sending you the intelligence you need to do your work better. Chaplains call it intuition. It's often guidance from souls who've crossed and are helping from the other side. 3. Keep a journal of signs. Every time something happens that feels like her, the lavender scent, a song on the radio that was her favorite, a patient saying something in her exact phrasing, write it down with date and time. When you have 10 entries, the pattern will stop being deniable. That's not faith, that's data. 4. On the anniversary of her death, don't go to the cemetery. Go to the hospital where she worked for 40 years. Walk the halls. Thank the building. Buildings hold memory, James. They remember the people who loved inside them. You'll feel her there more strongly than you'll ever feel her at a grave. 5. Teach one family per month what you learned tonight. When you're doing end-of-life counseling and they ask, "Where is she going?" don't give them the comfortable metaphor. Give them the map. Tell them about the 7 minutes, the hall of understanding, the work their person will do, the ways they'll stay connected. Some families will think you've lost it. Some will cry with relief. Give them the truth anyway. You're not a chaplain to comfort. You're a chaplain to guide. Will this bring her back? I asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear it. No, Metatron said, and the honesty was kinder than any lie. Bodies don't reverse. Death is one way for the physical form, but this will close the distance between where you are and where she's working. You're not resurrecting her. You're learning to collaborate across dimensions. And my faith? I asked, because that was the part I hadn't known was crumbling until Metatron started talking about frequencies and fields instead of thrones and harps. Your faith is being upgraded, Metatron said. The stories you were taught are training wheels. They help children and beginners understand concepts that are too complex for linear thinking. But you're not a beginner anymore. You've sat beside 214 deaths. You've earned the right to the operational manual, not the picture book. What if I can't do this? I asked, the weight of what I'd learned pressing down like a physical thing. What if I go home and by tomorrow I convince myself this was grief-induced psychosis? Then check the anchors, Metatron said. The journal entry you've never read. The heart monitor spike the nurse documented. The photograph in your mother's wallet. If even one fails to verify, go back to your old beliefs and I won't judge you. But if all three confirm, you'll have a choice. Keep preaching the simplified version that keeps people comfortable, or start teaching the complex version that actually helps them. His form was nearly transparent now, edges dissolving like morning fog when the sun remembers it has a job. I wasn't ready for this, I said, the words coming out like a confession. No one is, Metatron said gently. That's why we wait until you ask. Truth this operational doesn't show up uninvited. You asked what happens in the 7 minutes after death. I showed you. The question is, what will you do with the answer? The next morning I went home to my mother's apartment. The journal was in her bedside drawer, exactly where Metatron said it would be. Page 47, dated 6 weeks ago. James thinks he's prepared because he does this for a living, but no one is prepared to say goodbye to their mother. I hope the angels are kinder to him than he is to himself. I sat on her bed and cried into pages that smelled like her hand lotion. I called the hospital, asked for Nurse Patricia Chen, asked about the heart monitor spike at 11:52 p.m. She went quiet, then said, "You're Catherine's son, room 304. I said yes. She said, "It spiked to 80 BPM for 3 seconds, then flatlined again. I logged it as equipment malfunction, but I've seen it 43 times. Always when family is still in the room. I call it the goodbye signal. Your mother was saying goodbye." I thanked her and hung up before my voice broke completely. I checked my mother's wallet. Behind her driver's license, a photograph of me at age 7, sitting in a hospital waiting room, looking terrified. The moment I saw it, the memory unlocked. My father had just died and my mother was inside talking to doctors, and I was alone thinking, someone has to take care of people when they're scared. That was the moment I decided to become a chaplain instead of a doctor. She'd known all along. 3 anchors, 3 confirmations, all of it real. I started the practices that week, every morning. "Mom, help me find the right words." The first time I said it, I felt ridiculous. The 4th time, I walked into a patient's room and knew exactly what to say. Words I hadn't prepared, sentences that came fully formed as if someone was feeding me lines. The patient's daughter later told me, "You said exactly what my mother needed to hear. How did you know?" I didn't tell her. I just smiled. I started tracking the signs. Lavender scent in my office on a Wednesday afternoon when I was about to give up on a terrified patient. A song on the radio, What a Wonderful World, my mother's favorite, playing in the hospital cafeteria at exactly the moment I needed to remember why this work matters. 10 entries in 3 weeks. The pattern stopped being coincidence and started being correspondence. On the anniversary of her death, I went to Mercy General, the hospital where she'd worked for 40 years. I walked the halls, touched the walls, whispered thank you to the building that had held her passion and her purpose. And I felt her, not saw, not heard, but felt, the way you feel sunlight on your face even with your eyes closed. She was there. She was working. She was proud. I teach it now. When families ask me, "Where did he go?" I don't give them clouds and harps. I tell them about the 7 minutes, about the Hall of Understanding, about the work their person will do, about the ways they'll send signs if the family learns to recognize the frequency. Some families think I've lost it. Some cry with relief and say, "That's exactly what I needed to hear." I give them the truth anyway because I'm not a chaplain to comfort lies. I'm a chaplain to guide with maps. A celestial being told me what happens after death, and I wasn't ready for the answer. But I'm ready now, ready to teach it, ready to trust it, ready to live inside the knowledge that my mother isn't gone. She's relocated, working from a different office, using different tools, but still doing the work that made her who she was. The connection didn't break when her body stopped. It changed frequencies, and I'm learning to tune in. If this changed how you think about death, subscribe. If you've received signs you can't explain, drop frequency in the comments. And if you're not ready for the operational truth, that's okay. The truth waits, it doesn't expire. When you're ready to ask, the guides will answer, I promise.